Right now, everything around you, every object, every material, every living thing has some kind of age, some specific point of origin stretching back through time. But some things found here on Earth stretch back so extraordinarily far that the actual numbers involved become truly difficult for the human mind to properly, intuitively process. So, what actually are the oldest things ever discovered here on Earth, and what do these remarkable discoveries reveal about our planet's own deep, almost unimaginably long history? Let's dig into this properly, because the answer spans everything from ancient minerals to fossilized life to structures still standing today, and it reveals a seriously staggering scale of deep time worth, taking a moment to properly appreciate. Let's start with the oldest known material actually found on Earth, because this represents an appropriately foundational starting point for this whole broader topic. Tiny mineral crystals called zircons, discovered within ancient rock formations in Western Australia, have been dated to approximately 4.4 billion years old, making them the oldest confirmed earthly material currently known to science. These remarkably small crystals formed relatively soon after Earth itself originally formed, roughly 4.5 billion years ago, meaning these particular zircon crystals have survived essentially since very close to our planet's own actual formation, persisting through an almost incomprehensibly long stretch of subsequent geological history. This detail is worth sitting with directly because the sheer scale involved here is remarkably difficult to properly, intuitively grasp. 4.4 billion years represents roughly 98% of Earth's entire existence as a planet, meaning these specific zircon crystals have already existed for the overwhelming majority of our planet's entire geological history, quietly persisting through the earliest, most chaotic period of Earth's formation, through billions of years of subsequent geological change, continental movement, and dramatic environmental transformation, all the way through to their eventual discovery and scientific study by human researchers only very recently, in the grand scheme of this almost unimaginably long timeline. Let's talk about how researchers actually confirm these extraordinarily ancient dates too, because this represents an important methodological consideration worth exploring specifically, given how naturally skeptical people might reasonably be regarding such an extraordinarily old confirmed age. Researchers use a technique called radiometric dating, measuring the specific, predictable rate at which certain radioactive elements contained within these zircon crystals gradually decay into other, different elements over time. Since this decay process happens at an extremely precise, scientifically well understood rate, researchers can measure the specific ratio of original radioactive material to its decayed byproduct within a given sample, allowing for remarkably precise age calculation extending back billions of years with a documented, well-established degree of scientific reliability and cross-verification across multiple independent research teams and dating methods. Let's talk about the oldest confirmed rocks, as distinct from these individual mineral crystals already discussed too, because this represents an important, closely related distinction worth exploring specifically. While the zircon crystals already discussed represent the oldest individual mineral material currently confirmed, the oldest confirmed whole rock formations found in various specific locations, including parts of Canada and Greenland specifically, date to approximately 4 billion years old. Still an almost incomprehensibly ancient age, though somewhat younger than the individual zircon crystals already discussed, which managed to survive as tiny, remarkably durable mineral fragments, even as the larger rock formations that originally contained them were eventually broken down, weathered, and geologically transformed into entirely new rock formations over the intervening billions of years. Let's talk about the oldest confirmed evidence of life on Earth too, because this represents a particularly significant, actively researched category worth exploring in considerable additional depth. Researchers have identified various forms of evidence for extremely ancient microbial life, including specific chemical signatures and microscopic fossil structures found within ancient rock formations, with some of the most compelling, though still actively debated, evidence suggesting life may have existed on Earth as early as 3.5 to 4 billion years ago, remarkably soon after Earth's own surface had cooled sufficiently to potentially support any kind of life at all. This detail is worth appreciating because it suggests life may have emerged on Earth relatively quickly, In a broader geological sense, once conditions became even minimally suitable, rather than requiring an enormously extended additional waiting period beyond Earth's own initial formation and cooling. Let's talk about stromatolites specifically too, because they represent a particularly well-documented, visually striking example of extremely ancient life worth exploring in more detail. Stromatolites are layered rock structures formed through the activity of ancient microbial communities, primarily various forms of photosynthetic bacteria, which gradually built up these distinctive layered structures over extended periods through their own ongoing biological activity. Some of the oldest confirmed stromatolite fossils date back over 3 billion years, and, remarkably, some living stromatolites, formed through the ongoing activity of directly descended microbial communities, continue actively growing in certain specific modern locations today, including notably in Western Australia, offering researchers a actually rare, direct living connection to this same ancient biological process that's been continuously occurring in some form for billions of years of Earth's history. Let's talk about the oldest confirmed animal fossils too, because this represents a considerably more recent, though still extraordinarily ancient, category worth exploring specifically, given how much later complex animal life emerged compared to the earliest microbial life already discussed. The oldest confirmed animal fossils date to approximately 550 to 600 million years ago, corresponding to a specific geological period researchers refer to using a particular technical name, representing some of the earliest confirmed evidence of complex multicellular animal life on Earth. This detail is worth appreciating specifically because it illustrates just how much geological time separated the earliest, simplest microbial life already discussed from the eventual emergence of considerably more complex animal life, representing literally billions of years of ongoing evolutionary development before anything resembling recognizable animal life actually emerged within Earth's evolutionary history. Let's talk about the oldest confirmed human-made structures and artifacts too, because this represents an important, considerably more recent category worth exploring specifically, offering useful additional context by directly contrasting these geological and evolutionary timescales already discussed against the comparatively vastly shorter span of actual human history and technological development. The oldest confirmed stone tools, discussed at greater length in other explorations of early human and pre-human technological development, date back over 3 million years, representing an extraordinarily long span of continuous human and pre-human technological history in its own right, yet still representing an almost vanishingly small fraction of Earth's overall geological history already explored throughout the rest of this topic. Let's talk about the oldest confirmed still-standing human structures specifically too, because this represents an interesting, more specific category worth exploring before continuing this discussion further. Archaeological sites including Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey, dated to roughly 11,500 years old, represent some of the oldest confirmed monumental structures built by early human societies, predating other well-known ancient structures by several thousand years, and requiring researchers to reconsider previous assumptions regarding when and how early human societies first developed the kind of organized, coordinated effort necessary to construct large-scale monumental architecture. Let's talk about how these different categories of oldest things actually relate to and contextualize each other too, because this represents an important, unifying point worth exploring before wrapping up this broader discussion. Comparing the 4.4 billion year age of the oldest zircon crystals against the roughly 11,500 year age of humanity's oldest confirmed monumental structures reveals an almost incomprehensible difference in scale, with human civilization's entire recorded history representing an absolutely infinitesimal fraction, less than a single millionth of the total time these ancient zircon crystals have already existed. This comparison helps properly contextualize just how remarkably recently brief human civilization's entire documented history actually is, when measured against the almost unimaginably vast span of Earth's own deep geological history already explored throughout this topic. Let's talk about the oldest confirmed water ever discovered too, because this represents a particularly striking, somewhat unexpected category worth exploring specifically. Researchers studying ancient groundwater trapped deep within specific mining sites in Canada identified water estimated to be over 1.5 billion years old. meaning this particular water had remained completely isolated from the surface, sealed within deep underground rock formations, for an almost incomprehensibly long stretch of time. By the way, if you want to go even deeper into the secret lives of ancient humans, I just launched a full course called The Secret Lives of Ancient Humans. 10 modules, 3+ hours of content covering everything we never talk about on YouTube. What they feared, how they communicated, what hunted them, and much more. Plus an exclusive PDF guide included. Link in the description. See you inside. This discovery is worth appreciating specifically because it demonstrates that even something as seemingly ordinary and constantly cycling as water can, under the right specific geological circumstances, remain isolated and essentially unchanged for well over a billion years, offering researchers a remarkably unique window into ancient underground chemical and geological conditions that would otherwise be completely inaccessible for direct study. Let's talk about the oldest confirmed DNA ever recovered too, because this represents another particularly fascinating, actively developing area of research worth exploring in additional depth. Advances in genetic sequencing technology have allowed researchers to recover and successfully analyze genetic material from remarkably old specimens, with the current oldest confirmed DNA recovered from ancient sediment samples in Greenland, dating back approximately 2 million years. This ancient genetic material has allowed researchers to reconstruct detailed information about the specific plant and animal species that inhabited this particular region during this remarkably ancient period, offering an unprecedented, genetically detailed window into an ancient ecosystem that existed long before anything resembling modern humans had even emerged as a distinct species. This specific research area continues actively developing, with researchers regularly refining their techniques and occasionally identifying even older, recoverable genetic material as sequencing technology continues to improve. Let's talk about the oldest continuously living individual organisms currently known too, because this represents an interesting, closely related category worth exploring specifically, distinct from the ancient fossil evidence already discussed extensively throughout this topic. Certain specific individual trees, particularly including specimens of a long-lived pine species found in the western United States, have been confirmed through careful ring counting and other dating techniques to be over 4,000 years old, representing individual living organisms that have continuously existed since roughly the time of some of humanity's earliest confirmed written civilizations already explored in other discussions regarding early human history. Even more remarkably, certain colonial organisms, including specific clonal plant colonies where genetically identical individual stems all originate from a single, shared ancient root system, have been estimated at considerably older ages still, with some researchers proposing certain specific colonial organisms may be tens of thousands of years old, representing an entirely different category of biological age worth appreciating alongside the more straightforward individual organism. Examples already discussed. Let's talk about the oldest light humans can actually observe too, because this represents a seriously fascinating category worth exploring specifically, extending this discussion beyond purely earthly materials into a broader cosmic context directly relevant to understanding deep time more completely. While not technically found on Earth in the same physical sense as the other examples already discussed throughout this topic, the cosmic microwave background radiation, detectable using specialized astronomical equipment, represents light that has been traveling through the universe since roughly 380,000 years after the Big Bang itself, corresponding to an age of approximately 13.8 billion years. This detail is worth including because it offers an important, humbling point of comparison. Even the oldest confirmed earthly materials already discussed throughout this topic, those 4.4 billion-year-old zircon crystals, represent a relatively recent development when measured against this even more ancient, truly cosmic timescale, reminding us that Earth's own deep history, however almost incomprehensibly vast it already seems, still represents only a portion of the universe's own even longer overall history. Let's talk about the oldest confirmed impact craters on Earth too, because this represents another interesting geological category worth exploring specifically. Researchers have identified and confirmed the age of various ancient impact craters, sites where large meteorites or other cosmic objects collided with Earth's surface in the deep past, with some of the oldest confirmed examples dating back over 2 billion years. Studying these ancient impact sites provides researchers with valuable information regarding Earth's early geological history and its ongoing relationship with the broader solar system. Since these ancient impact events would have had significant, measurable effects on Earth's environment and geological development at the specific time they actually occurred, offering another valuable, physically confirmable data point contributing to the overall picture of Earth's deep geological history already explored extensively throughout this discussion. Let's talk about how continuing research and improving technology continue to push back and refine these specific dating records too, because it's worth acknowledging honestly, before wrapping up this discussion, that many of the specific ages and records already discussed throughout this topic represent our current best scientific understanding, rather than absolutely final, permanently fixed conclusions. As dating technology and research methods continue improving, researchers regularly identify new candidate materials and refine existing age estimates, meaning the specific records already discussed throughout this topic could plausibly shift somewhat as research continues, particularly regarding some of the more actively debated and actively researched categories already touched on, including the earliest evidence of microbial life specifically. This ongoing scientific refinement represents a normal, healthy feature of active scientific research generally, rather than any kind of weakness or unreliability in the underlying scientific methodology already discussed extensively throughout this topic. Let's talk about how researchers actually search for and identify these extraordinarily ancient materials and fossils too, because this represents an important methodological consideration worth addressing directly. Researchers specifically target geologically stable regions where extremely ancient rock formations have survived without being subjected to the kind of significant geological transformation, including tectonic activity, volcanic activity, and erosion that would otherwise destroy or fundamentally alter ancient rock and fossil material over such an extended time frame. Certain specific regions of the world, including parts of Australia, Canada, and Greenland already mentioned throughout this topic, happen to contain unusually stable, well-preserved ancient geological formations, making these specific regions particularly valuable and heavily studied locations for researchers specifically searching for this kind of extraordinarily ancient material and evidence. Let's talk about the oldest confirmed ice cores too, because this represents another valuable, well-documented category worth exploring specifically before wrapping up this broader discussion. Researchers drilling deep into ancient ice sheets, particularly in Antarctica specifically, have recovered ice cores containing trapped air bubbles and other preserved material dating back well over 1 million years, in some specific documented cases approaching 2 million years old. These ancient ice cores provide researchers with an extraordinarily valuable, continuously layered record of historical atmospheric composition and climate conditions, allowing scientists to directly study actual preserved samples of ancient atmosphere rather than relying purely on indirect geological inference, representing one of the more scientifically valuable categories of ancient material already discussed throughout this topic, given how directly and precisely it allows researchers to reconstruct historical climate conditions across an extraordinarily long, continuously layered timescale. Let's talk about how this specific research area continues actively contributing to contemporary scientific understanding too, because it's worth appreciating the ongoing, practical value this kind of ancient material continues providing well beyond simple historical curiosity alone. Climate researchers specifically rely on these ancient ice core records to help understand natural patterns of historical climate variation, providing essential scientific context for properly understanding and interpreting more recent climate changes and trends. This detail is worth including because it demonstrates that studying Earth's oldest materials serves seriously practical, ongoing scientific purposes extending well beyond simple curiosity about deep time alone, directly informing contemporary scientific understanding of climate science and broader environmental research more generally. Let's talk about how the concept of deep time itself developed as a scientific idea too, because this represents an interesting, historically significant dimension worth exploring before concluding this discussion. For much of earlier human intellectual history, many cultures and belief systems assumed Earth's age was considerably more limited, sometimes estimated at only a few thousand years based on various historical and religious calculations. The gradual scientific development of geology as a formal discipline, particularly during the 18th and 19th centuries specifically, progressively revealed the almost unimaginably vast scale of Earth's actual geological history, already explored extensively throughout this topic, representing one of the more significant, truly paradigm-shifting developments in the broader history of scientific understanding. This historical shift in understanding Earth's true age fundamentally transformed how scientists approached numerous other related fields, including evolutionary biology specifically, since a properly scientifically accurate understanding of deep time proved essential for even beginning to properly understand how gradual evolutionary processes, requiring enormous spans of time to produce the kind of biological diversity and complexity actually observed on Earth, could have plausibly occurred at all. This detail is worth appreciating because it illustrates how our modern understanding of these extraordinarily ancient materials already discussed throughout this entire topic didn't emerge in isolation. It developed alongside, and directly enabled, numerous other significant scientific developments, demonstrating just how foundational and accurate evidence-based understanding of Earth's true deep timescale actually proved for the broader development of modern scientific understanding more generally, extending well beyond geology alone into biology, astronomy, and numerous other closely related scientific fields. Let's talk about how ordinary people can actually encounter and directly experience some of this deep time evidence too, because this represents a practically relevant, accessible detail worth including before wrapping up this broader discussion. Various museums and specific geological sites around the world offer direct public access to viewing some of these ancient materials already discussed throughout this topic, including specific rock formations, ancient fossil sites, and museum collections featuring some of the oldest confirmed materials currently known to science. This detail is worth including because it demonstrates that this almost unimaginably vast scale of deep time isn't purely an abstract scientific concept confined to specialized research laboratories alone, but represents something ordinary people can actually directly encounter and personally experience. Standing before or directly viewing physical material that has truly persisted since almost unimaginably distant periods in Earth's own deep, ancient history, tangible, physical connection to deep time that requires no specialized equipment or advanced degree to personally, directly appreciate, only a willingness to pause and properly consider exactly what that specific piece of ancient material has actually witnessed and survived across its own almost incomprehensibly long existence. Let's zoom out and pull all of these different threads together, because the full picture of the oldest things ever found on Earth turns out to span an almost incomprehensible range of deep time. From mineral crystals persisting since very close to our planet's own initial formation 4.4 billion years ago, through evidence of Earth's earliest microbial life emerging remarkably soon afterward, through the eventual emergence of complex animal life several billion years later still, and finally, extremely recently by comparison, the emergence of early human technology and eventually, monumental human architecture and civilization itself. This complete picture, spanning from Earth's earliest mineral formations through to humanity's own comparatively brief, recent presence on the planet, offers a really valuable, properly scaled perspective on just how vast Earth's actual geological history truly is, and correspondingly, just how remarkably recent and brief human civilization's entire documented existence actually represents within that almost unimaginably long overall timeline. So the next time you encounter a mention of these ancient zircon crystals, these billion-year-old stromatolites, or any of the other remarkably ancient materials and fossils explored throughout this discussion, it's worth taking a genuine moment to appreciate the almost incomprehensible scale of time actually involved, materials and evidence connecting us directly back to a period so far removed from ordinary human experience that the specific numbers involved truly challenge our normal, everyday intuitive sense of what old actually means in any practical, relatable sense. Which leaves an interesting thought worth sitting with. If something as seemingly permanent and unchanging as solid rock and mineral material can actually trace its origin back across such an almost unimaginably vast span of deep time, persisting essentially unchanged since very close to Earth's own initial formation, what does that suggest about how differently we might need to think about our own brief human presence here? And about the almost unimaginably long stretch of deep time that will presumably continue unfolding across this same planet long after human civilization's own comparatively brief chapter in Earth's overall story has eventually come to its own conclusion.